First step to changing out your shocks in this 2013 Acura ILX is to get access through the trunk. So what you need to do is to lift out the cover over your spare. It could be bolted or pinned in from the back seat, so you might have to look for that. So lift that out, and then you're going to remove this back piece, okay? Shouldn't be any pins holding it, it's just clipped in. So if you can get your fingers under this or get a hand under it, maybe start with a screwdriver and then just pull up, it's going to pop right out, okay? So get that out of your way. Now you're going to have to peel back this liner to get to the top of the shock. So there are a number of different places where a screw or a pin is going to have to be removed. Alright, so just keep an eye on all the edges around here and down through the bottom. So what we're looking at is different kinds of pins. There's two different kinds. One is a double piece pin. So what you have to do is get under the first layer, pry it up, then get under the second layer and pull it out. There's also a second kind of pin here that is simply one piece. So you need to get under that, say with a claw hammer sometimes or a similar tool, and pry that up just with a little bit of force. These can be brittle and you may have to replace these, but it's very easy to break these, so be careful. So once we have those up, then we can peel back the liner, okay? All I gotta do is push it back like this, get you something to hold it steady, and I'm gonna show you how to access the top of the shock over here. Now that I have my liner out of the way and I can see the top of the shock clearly, what I'm going to do is first take my, in this case, 14mm wrench and get it over the top of that to be ready to turn. I've already broken this loose, so I'm just going to show you how I did that. And there is a place to insert an Allen wrench or a Torx wrench, whichever it might be, through the top of this bolt, because it turns the whole pin in the shock. So you have to figure out how you're going to hold that stationary. So I'm going to put my my Torx through the top, and then that allows me to loosen the bolt. Well, I guess the other way, right? So that's how you're going to go ahead and take the nut off of the top of the shock. Now I'm going to get access to the shock through removing the back wheel. So before I jack up the car, I am just going to break the nuts loose. Not going to take them off, just break them loose. Get it up in the air. I've got the jack under my designated point for changing the tire. I always put a piece of 2x4 between, just to kind of keep from bending up anything. Alright, so the tire is barely touching the ground, so I'm gonna spin those off real quick and then pull the tire off now. Now I have taken a second jack and I'm putting it under the frame underneath here. One is just to add a little pressure for safety. Okay, so now I'm supporting the car in two places. And also, we'll come back to this, but it's going to be a way that I can put the new shock in and jack it back into position and save me some time and energy. So now when I jack up my suspension, it takes the pressure off of this and it's easy to take off. So we have the nut on top, we have this next, and then we have the grommet or washer, whatever you want to call it. But when you buy the next shock, you'll see that it comes with all these new pieces. If not, and they're still in good shape, you can certainly reuse some of these pieces. Now I have released the pressure on the top of the shock, and now it's probably good to release pressure off the bottom. So I'm going to let my jack down slowly to let the suspension go down, and that will now release the pressure off of the bottom of the shock, and I'm going to take the bolt out of that and remove the shock. Alright, so now we are going to loosen the bolt on the shock here. This is a 14 millimeter. And it's not super tight. I don't know a lot about foot-pounds, but little old me's able to turn this one fairly easily. This is coming off pretty easy. You don't have to hold the bolt on the other side either. It is part of the car, so I'm going to continue to spin this off, and may need to release pressure or push my jack up and down to release pressure enough to get the bolt to slide out easily. Alright, that bolt came out very easily for me. I live in Texas. There's no salt on the roads, no rust, so if you're in a northern climate, you may have bigger problems to solve with that. So the bolt is taken out. I'm going to decompress or compress the shock, pull it out sideways, and then pull it down, and there it is. Okay. So as you take it out, you need to observe how the hardware is on the top. Okay. So you've got a sleeve, you got a rubber grommet, and you got a washer that goes over the shaft here. So that's going to be important as you get ready to put in the new shock. So before I do that, I am going to lower this jack clear down to make room to get that new shock in position. If I left it up too high, then let's see, I think it may already be down pretty far, but okay, now the suspension is completely relaxed, and so I'm going to get my new shock ready to go to slide up in there. These are the pieces that came with my new shocks. So these are the KYB gas adjust shocks. You can see the part number there and the hardware that comes with it. So everything should be fine. Note that on this kind of shock, on the end is just a flat portion where you can get a wrench around it. It's not a Allen wrench or a Torx, but just a regular end wrench to go around the top to hold the shaft in place for this model. Now I have my hardware on the end of the shock, the new hardware. And what I'm going to do is take this top end and first put it up into the trunk there, and then once I have that in, I'm actually going to have to compress the shock a little bit first and hold it into place. It takes a little bit of wrestling to hold it in place. And with the shock compressed and up in there, the other end I am going to slide into place right there. And then once I can get it between those marks, I'll be able to slide the bolt in and thread it. But it just takes a little strength to compress the shock, depending on what kind of shocks you get, I guess. So we'll see if we can get that done now. So now I'm going to take the shock, hold it upside down, push down against the ground, against the cement I got below me here. Try to compress it some, and then hold it, compress, and put it into place. So let's see if I have enough strength and time to do that. Okay, and now we're going to, the top is in, hardware is on. Now we just need to scoot this around to get the bolt to start into its place. So the bolt has started the threading. I'm just going to tighten that down to where it's snug, and then we're going to go address the attachment in the trunk. My bolt snug, not completely tightened down. Now is when my jack here is going to come in handy. And now I can jack up this suspension, line it up at the top, and push it into place. Okay, and at some point you're going to see your shock start to compress. Alright, that means it's up there flush and it's in place, and now we can go into the trunk and put on the hardware up there. I'm going to put my rubber piece down. I'm going to put my metal piece on top as it was. You have to push down on that so you can get your nuts started. Okay? And now it's simply getting that tightened down hand tight, because you're just going to put pressure against that rubber washer. You don't want to smash it clear down to nothing. Now that you have this snugged up in the trunk, you can go back down under the car, and where it is attached here, you can tighten this down to 14 millimeter. We can remove this jack, so I'm going to lower this. Again, that's just the suspension relaxing. We'll get all these lug nuts on, everything snugged up, wheel back on tight. Now we can take it for a ride and see if everything works. And the final step will be putting the trunk back together. Again, getting the liner in place, putting your screws and plastic pins back together, snapping your border here back over the top. Again, you just set it into place to where it's lined up with the clips and push it down into place. It'll just snap right in, and get your cover over your spare tire in, and you should be all ready to go. So there's your there's one man's experience on how to replace the rear shocks on a 2013 Acura ILX.